It's the dawn of a new era on Assetto Corsa Competizione as we open the doors and welcome GT2 machinery into the fold of SRO Motorsports Group America on ACC. With the likes of Maserati, Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, and KTM gracing the folds, it is sure to be able to bring great racing across the board. And oh yeah, we've got a new track to debut as well as we head up to the hills of Austria and get ready to go racing around the Red Bull Ring. Hello everyone and welcome to the SRO Motorsports community. My name is DJ Clark, delighted to be joined by Arjuna Kankapati and with Mike Yao serving as our director behind the scenes. And Arjuna, it's Christmas Day. We've got new cars, a new track, it's presents everywhere. It doesn't get much better than this.
Yeah, in some ways, right, a surprise as well, the announcement of the Red Bull Ring. Drivers very much looking forward to a new challenge, and a challenge that will see the GT2 machines, I think, really pushed, right? Because we were talking about it just before we went on air. These cars are almost as fast as their GT3 counterparts, but with a little less downforce, with a lot more power. They make their speed in a little bit of a different way as we take a look at some of the elevation change on the run-up into what is technically turn number 3.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before. There's a little bit of Road America cornering here at the Red Bull Ring, but at the same time, this is one of the most storied tracks when we talk about racing in Europe. The wonderful run up and down through the mountains here as we take the plunge down into Schlossgold. And it's not just about the high-speed power nature of this circuit, but that elevation change really throws the drivers off and throws the cars for a loop. And Arjuna, as you said, with less downforce on these GT2 cars, it's a lot more mechanical grip, and that elevation change is going to come into play in a big way.
And even more important, right, because you're at a track with that elevation. Some of these cars have turbos, some of them do not, and so at elevation, turbo forces the air through those engines, and they'll have a little bit more of an advantage. I think it's also going to be interesting, you come to a track like this, what's the first thing that sometimes drivers have to talk about, DJ? Especially when they're coming to it for the first time on a new sim like this. Well, track limits. I think that will be a major talking point, especially in qualifying.
Yeah, very much so, as we actually take a look at really the main culprit of that, going down through Rindt and down through A1, the final two corners on the circuit. It is a very, very fast section of the circuit, a brush-breaking right-hander in that penultimate corner. Very easy to track out wide as you carry as much speed as possible. And yeah, we don't have the longest races here today. We're in store for a 20-minute and a 30-minute race as a showcase here of this GT2 machinery. But I think you're right, Arjuna, for qualifying, getting those off tracks going to be very, very crucial to minimize those as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how drivers are going to work their way on forward. Starts here are quite chaotic, right? That climb up into turn 1, relatively short run once you get the drop of the green flag. And then out of there, the chaos, the scramble into what is that first heavy braking zone. And we've seen plenty of chaos both in the virtual and real worlds. Now, we haven't necessarily seen GT3 cars come here in SRO competition ever really, but GT2 cars have over the last 2 years. And so that's where this track, of course, takes its place on Assetto Corsa Competizione. As excited as I think plenty of drivers are for this as well, there's plenty of excitement for what is coming down the road, I think, DJ. I know I'm excited for the, I was excited when the announcement of the Nordschleife happened. I can't wait to jump into that on Assetto Corsa Competizione as well.
Yeah, neither can I. And of course, that is as a result of SRO being now a part of the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, a part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. And so we are very, very happy to be bringing that into the sim. We will have more information about that as the year goes along. But for now, it is all about the Red Bull Ring and it is all about these GT2 cars. And as you said, Arjuna, that run up to turn 1 going to be very, very tricky, especially because it's an uphill braking zone. So it sort of invites you to take a little bit more speed than you can, but it can definitely bite you if you're not careful. But we are ready to go qualifying here. 10 minutes on the clock. Let's see what they are able to do. Nils Nyak's going to be the first driver that we follow.
It's going to be interesting to see which cars different people have chosen, right? Like, because there's not much time that they will have had to test. They'll be coming into this somewhat blind. Nils Nyak's someone that we traditionally see, of course, in that BS competition BMW, but he's here in the Maserati and I think going to be slinging it around. He's down the hill with open qualifying as well, so with plenty of drivers going to be jockeying for track position, I think it's relatively important to try and get out front as soon as possible. Look at Dan Terry in the KTM Expo, getting a little bit checked up as he runs behind one of the Porsche 935s.
Yeah, and checked up is going to be the key here, because it's not going to be necessarily nearly as much as we talk about when we go around this circuit around the aero wash. Less downforce created on these cars, so that means that you're not going to have that much of a problem getting that. Oh, is Denise Pope having a little bit of a problem for Wild Things Racing there, showing off just how difficult this track can be. But it really is, you want to find a little bit of clean air, not necessarily to worry about that aero wash, as I was saying, but it's more about checking your braking zones and being as late as possible into the corners to carry momentum, and having that driver in front of you, that's going to check you up.
I mean, even in a race, sometimes we talk about how you get lulled into driving the speed of the car in front of you, as behind Dan Terry, another one of the KTM Expo, slid off the track there. In qualifying, you're pushing just that little bit more, so there's less risk, I would say, of that happening, but you do end up, like you say, just losing a little bit of time. Track like this, at elevation, you might think that the hole in the air would be a benefit, but I get the suspicion with drivers just trying to get to grips with the machines that they'll be trying to figure things out. Zach Patterson runs to the line in a very colorful Audi R8 Evo. The fun thing about this pack, I think, as well, is, DJ, the cars look visually so aggressive that I can't wait to see how they all get painted on the sim as well.
Yeah, neither can I. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Always wonderful to see those new liveries that come out, and especially, I think, on cars like the Maserati, like the KTM, that are very visually striking, that there's going to be some really wonderful paint schemes that we're going to be able to see to put on there. Zach Patterson here with a little bit of gold on that Audi GT2 as well. I really like that. That's very, very pretty.
Yeah, and I like this as well in the sim, that you're sometimes allowed to be a little bit more free with your liveries, and so we see colors that sometimes you would not. I see a lot of purple race cars. I know our friend behind the scenes, Taylor, loves a bit of purple. I love some pink on a race car as well, so I hope that we see a few more bold color combinations moving forward as the first times begin to trickle on in. And it's Maserati 1 and 2, but really only by virtue of the fact that they were the first two times onto the board.
Yeah, but they are going to stick here for the moment, as George Boothby only able to put down about 5/10 behind there. We see the first KTM coming onto the board in 6th place. It does look like that Maserati's got some good speed. Let's see what Zach Patterson for LP Racing is going to be able to do in that number 2. That's that corner that we talked about, tracking it out as wide as possible, trying to carry momentum through the last 2 corners. One of the Porsches crossing over the line right now. That's going to be up into 7th. Patterson going to try to get a time on the board. Doesn't look like that's going to stick. I'm not sure if that was an outlap or maybe there was an off track.
Yeah, track limits, like we were saying earlier, very much going to be an important talking point. Guitar hero, world champion of the past, George Boothby jumps into the Mercedes AMG, slides up the inside of a very pink machine. That will have cost him just a little bit of time. He's half a second right now behind that top time in qualifying, and we're just about 10 minutes in the session. I think there is going to be a bit of a bed-in period. First lap's a bit of a banker lap. You're trying to set yourself up, and now that Boothby's got some clean air, this lap probably not an improvement, but watch for the next lap to be an even bigger jump for him to try and leapfrog his way to the top of the order.
Yeah, he's 2/10 up here at this point, so definitely starting to be able to get all of that together. Nice onto the brakes, coming down through Rent. Perfect track out there. Track limit's going to be that new pole as Neil Niox is able to jump up to the top by 0.4 of a second. The KTM in the background going to be a little bit off. But what does Boothby have under the hood of that Mercedes AMG GT2? Is that going to be good enough? Not going to count. I think there may have been a little bit of an off track coming through that infield section of the circuit.
Jaroslav Honzik, Yardier's up to 4th. We now have a pretty big split between Niox and effectively 4th, and then a pretty tight spread behind. So I think it goes to show that Niels has figured these things out and maybe been able to dial in a little bit of the setups. The Porsche number 78, best number, by the way, in the entirety of the world, not just my opinion, but Lewis McLeod's opinion as well, slides up into 8th position. I do like, even though we are seeing the Maseratis running relatively strong right now, you have the Mercedes of Boothby up there, Audis, Porsches, KTMs. Nice little diverse grid that we're going to get to see over 2 races here today, DJ.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see because we have to remember it may not be just a one-lap pace here for these cars and drivers. The AMG, the Mercedes, may have a little bit more of long-run pace. Again, a 20-minute and a 30-minute race that we will have here as Houston's going to bring the car now down through the final corners, tracked out. Ooh, that may have been a little bit wide there. We'll have to see. Definitely crossed over there. I'm going to have to see if the overtake driver is going to be able to keep this on, and that looks like it's going to be invalidated there. So, Arjuna, you hit the nail on the head. These track limits really coming back to bite here early on.
I mean, it's the case in Formula One. It stands to reason in cars with even less downforce, it will be even more of an issue, right? As you slide your way around the track, and so as Yardier, Mr. Jaroslav Honzik to the line. Now, that was a small improvement in time, although I'm not sure if it necessarily counted because it hasn't updated as his best of the attempts. And so he's another one to have found out how strict those track limits can be. And the further we get now into the session, I talked about betting in earlier. Let's not forget that with the amount of power that we have as a car into the wall hard, that might have been Patterson getting past it cleanly. But tires are going to start to feel a little bit worse for the wear.
Yeah, tires are going to be aware, as that's one of the things that ACC does model absolutely perfectly, is that tire wear. By the way, that was not Zach Patterson, thankfully, there. I think that was one of the Porsches there. I'm not sure if that was Soltov or Folk there that had that problem. But let's see for Zach Patterson. Currently in 9th place right now, got about a 10th over that number 78 Porsche. So that's going to have a little bit of breathing room. But as you said, big gaps up to the front of the field. Zach's really going to have to put this down here in the last couple of runs.
Yeah, I say big gaps, but now look at Baldwin within, what, a 10th and a half of Naoyox, and that is a battle that we've seen in so many SRO esports competitions. We'll get to hopefully relive that again, and these cars, I expect the battling is going to be quite fun because with the amount of power that you have, the lack of traction effectively through some of the corners with the limited downforce, DJ, I wouldn't be too surprised if they find a way to go side by side for the entirety of a lap.
I wouldn't either. I mean, the only thing that's really going to come back to bite him here is a couple of these corners do get slightly narrow, but this is an FIA Grade 1 circuit, so plenty of room to run wide there. We could see a side-by-side battle, certainly possible up through the first sector. I worry a little bit about down through the infield, but we'll have to see. Zach Patterson, LP Racing, currently in 11th place, trying to unseat Nola as the top Audi in the field. Let's see what Zach has got underneath the hood with under 2 minutes left to go. Patterson going to cross over the line, and it looks like that's not going to be an improvement.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as though it was. And again, though, even though it's not jumping him forward, even if he finds 0.04 of a second, that gets him up into the top 10. 0.2 of a second, now he's up into the top 8 or so. So small margins, again, in that mid-pack. And our poor producer, Mike Gow, is going to have eyes in the back of his head, out of the side as well, trying to catch all of the action as it's taking place. You have seen some drivers come into pit lane. I think that gives you that bit of an indication that tires do reach a bit of a tipping point. They've come in, got on a fresh set of boots, and DJ, one more attempt with around 60 seconds left in the session.
Yeah, 60 seconds left in the section and about 90 seconds to put that time on the board. Drivers will be able to complete their fastest laps. So we'll take a look at Naoyox right now in that Maserati. You can see him on the screen there. And these are their personal streams that you are seeing. So lots of heads-up displays there to be able to see that. Always interesting to be able to see just what drivers are running with.
You can always grab the second screen perspective, of course, and jump on with some of these drivers and get the perspective of on board, how crazy I think this race start is going to be. But don't forget to stay here and focus on all of the action that's happening across of everything, because boy, is it going to be dramatic. Naoyox in the run into the penultimate corner. We'll get the chance to set another lap time after this if I get it correct, but just watch him trying to make sure he stays as close to those white lines as possible. You can stray slightly beyond them, but you have to try and keep all four wheels at least somewhat within the bounds of the curve. Naoyox to the line, and 27 for his best. That's not even close to an improvement.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a little bit of a back-off lap there from him, although he did run perilously wide, already invalidated it there, so they did run perilously wide coming up into turn 1. Here is Boothby as the clock is about to strike 0. As we said earlier, drivers will be able to complete their hot lap. Baldwin up to pole position by 72 thousandths of a second. Merest of margins there for the Mercedes.
And Baldwin's one of those true crossover racers, right? So capable in the sim world, but can do it in the real world as well. No surprise to see him at the death rise to the top. We'll see if Naoyox, who we think might have, of course, invalidated that lap through the opening corner, has a chance to respond. Here comes Boothby, though, into that middle sector. Currently sits around 7/10 or so of a second off the pace. The Veloce esports driver currently a 10th up on his best time so far.
Yeah, but only a 10th, and that's merely going to get him up into the top 4. Now he's gained a couple more 10ths here as he continues to run around. He needs a big improvement here through the final sector if he wants to be able to break into those podium positions. Tracking the car wide down into Rent, going to bring it across here as it goes, and this will be the last car. Oh, big slide coming down through A1. Let's see if that cost him a couple of 10ths as he's going to charge to the line right now. Still up 2 tenths. P4 for George Boothby, a good run, but still a little ways off there of that top 3.
And Niels Naoyox did not improve. He did get a chance to run to the line, but no improvement for him, neither for Dan Suzuki, who's just finished 24 hours of racing alongside the likes of Tony Kanaan, Matt Malone, and Quirk, but joins us here in the virtual world in these GT2 machines. Again, it was a slightly larger gap at the top than maybe we would have wanted through the entire field, but 72 thousandths between first and second. And then when you go and look from 8th on back, DJ, there's hundreds, there's thousands splitting the rest of the field.
Well, that's exactly the kind of action that was promised here in GT2 racing. Less downforce, more horsepower, a little bit more of a, I've heard these cars described to me as more of a point-and-shoot style car. And so that really puts this all down to the driver far more. It's much more akin to driving a little bit of a rear-wheeled TC car in the way that these cars are going to run, obviously with a lot more horsepower coming in. So that is really GT2 proving its worth here with these narrow margins.
And remember, this is meant to be the step up for drivers looking to then go to GT3s after this. This is meant for amateur drivers. It's not meant to replace GT3s by any means. It does still produce some great racing, similar lap times, but like you say, in a very different way. And it means that ultimately you have to learn to listen to what the car is trying to tell you what it wants to do. I think that's something that's probably pretty important in this class of car.
Yeah, it's very important to be able to do, and now as we get ready to transition into the race, you're going to have to learn a whole different language with it. It's one thing to go out and be hot lapping, it's one thing to go out and to be practicing in these cars, but now we get to find out how these cars will handle in wheel-to-wheel combat with that less downforce on the car, with that more horsepower. I've got to expect that we're going to see some great side-by-side runs coming down the straightaways here, side-by-side battles through, and because of that lack of downforce, we may, as you said, Arjuna, be able to see a little bit more side-by-side than we would be able to do down into the infield section. But the good news for race fans is we have a short pace lap here. That's right, the field is gridding up just before they enter Rent, so not a lot of time to warm up the tires, but a very quick reaction needed from all of these drivers.
And as you were saying about the tires and, you know, this being a bit of a sprint, let's not forget it's only going to be a 20-minute race. So there's not much time to really worry about. We did see drivers, though, need tires after 10 minutes in qualifying. So clearly it's going to be something that they have to manage. Talking earlier as well about the fact that we're racing here at elevation at the Red Bull Ring maybe means it's not such a surprise to see the Maseratis and the Mercedes dominating up towards the front. Well, they're the only two cars in this GT2 pack that have turbo-powered engines. The rest naturally aspirated, although the KTM Expo does have a turbocharged engine. It's just a little bit smaller than the rest.
Yeah, so again, that little bit of discrepancy that we love to talk about in GT racing, makes and models, different manufacturers deciding what is going to be the strength of their car, and you're going to have those horses for courses that come to play at different points on the track. But here, as we get the roll off right now, you can see the field of GT2s coming around, everybody doing a little bit of weaving there. Baldwin and Naoyox leading the field around down through Rent. Niax taking a little bit of an advantage there in the Maserati rather. See Mercedes there behind as well. Everybody just holding on, doing a little bit of warming up on those brakes. You've got to make sure the brakes are up to temperature as well as the hard and heavy braking zones get ready to take place. But now the field comes down through the final corner. You can see a little bit of a checkup there from behind as all eyes turn towards the flag stand, and we welcome in a new era on ACC as there goes the flag, and we are ready to go racing here at the Red Bull Ring. It's a clean getaway from Baldwin. He is going to be able to get into the lead. Niax holds in behind. Meanwhile, Addison and Boothby side by side down into turn one, 3 wide, farther back of the field. Everyone trying to get through turn one cleanly.
It was a slip, though, well wide off the track for your leader, and now James Baldwin, Niels Naujoks side by side on the rise up into what is turn number 3. The Mercedes retakes the pointers onto the brakes. They will slam. Who's going to go most aggressive of them all behind? No 3 wide inside of the top 10 or so. A bully moment behind. Boothby pushes Addison off the track, and now he'll watch as Honzik and Noller close on the run down into Schlossgold.
They're going to have that run there. Noller and the Audi looking to be able to pick up positions, and going around the outside can be a good idea. 3 wide coming farther back in the field as they try to sort themselves out. Noller trying to run around the outside and carry as much momentum as possible.
I think that was Jaroslav Honzik that slid it up the inside. We'll wait at the timing beam at the end of this sector to get the update in the ordering, but this look from up above through the middle sector, the double left-hander will show. Finally, the field's starting to get single filed out. The gap's beginning to build where some of those bubbles and battles are really raging on, but into the final sector, it was Jaroslav Honzik that went around the into the inside rather to get up into 4th position, but Baldwin will lead them on the run to the line.
He will lead them as he did, but he's got to be very, very careful because Niels Naujoks waiting for an opportunity to pounce. His drivers try to negotiate that tricky off-track hole. I think that was the Audi there running a little bit wide coming down through the final corner. Great camera angles here being provided by Mike Yao as we see everything, and indeed it was that Audi of Noller having a bad run through the final corner. He's going to lose 2-3 spots.
Amazed that he's only down to 8th position. That could have been a whole lot worse. This time it's Jaroslav Honzik that slides wide at turn 1. Now that's 2 runs in a row through the opening corner that a Maserati's gone deep, maybe just not getting to grips with the braking system up on that run, and maybe getting tricked by the fact that gravity works in your favor and getting a bit too confident. On board in 9th position as Boris Schauk get up the inside of Noller as the Audi continues to drop down through the field. Great to see LFM's own rising up through the field.
Yeah, very good to see there for that, as there we see the battle starting to take place. The Audi looking like it was stretching its legs a little bit on the straightaway leading into Schlossgold. Side by side farther back in the field there, and a big move down to the inside. KTM versus KTN. This is David Karapentin trying to be able to hold off an attack here as they run right now. Grady up in front of him. Dan Suzuki looking behind in that Mercedes.
Yeah, and you got to wonder in this mid-pack, how aggressive are you going to want to be? The second race of the day is going to be a 30-minute race, but has a qualifying session of its own. So these drivers aren't battling to start that second race in a slightly better position. They'll be more worried about letting drivers in front start to run away. Already the Audi of Noller, I think 1 second behind the top 6. That will see a potential draft breakaway is down through the final corner. The Maserati just getting a little bit squirrely and now running through the grass as well. Question will be, you see the gap in front growing, how aggressive are you going to get?
Well, I'll tell you what there, it looks like David's going to try to go for a big move up into the inside of turn 1, trying to make that move on Grady. But again, that Maserati getting squirrely, and Dan Suzuki says, thank you very much, I'll take that position. And Solitov and the Porsche also looking to be able to gain on the disadvantage.
Got to be careful on the sausage curves not to unsettle the balance of the car, and that unique shape of the Porsche 935, very distinctive. That's a slight mistake, but somehow winds it up just in the nick of time. Traffic will go either side of Karapetian in the number 74 machine, and goodness gracious me, DJ, how did that not end in disaster?
That is just good heads-up driving from everyone around as they're side by side between Solitov and Suzuki in front, trying to sort themselves out. Solitov, as you said, in that sort of throwback rear tail of that Porsche, very reminiscent of the 70s and 80s kind of style cars that we've seen in the past. Now going to try for a move on Suzuki, going down into Rauk, but that's not going to play itself out. Karapetian may have a little bit of a look here as well, and keep an eye on Broadbent and Martin from behind. We ride on board Solitov. Oh, car off into the grass.
And that's suboptimal to say the very least. Jimmy Broadbent's going to say freebies and squeak his way on through. Or rather, that was Jimmy Broadbent that got involved in that one and slid his way on wide. Jimmy, oh poor Jimmy, always getting involved in something.
Yeah, just a little bit of bad luck there. Maybe that Maserati a little bit squirrely, it looks like, on corner exit, as it's just kind of not looking planted nearly as much as the other cars in front of him. Right now, here we follow the DG Racing number 74 is in front. Solidov and Suzuki going to try to sort themselves out a little bit. Solidov the leading Porsche at the moment, but maybe muscled a little bit wide.
A little bit wide is a bit of an understatement. Now, these drivers are getting away with these infringements on track limits, but eventually, race control will bite back if they take too many liberties, so you got to be careful. Patterson in the Audi going to go the long way around, and the gold's going to be bold, but not necessarily going to work out if he gets squeezed onto that sausage curb. Josh Martin gives him a lot of room to run around the outside, but now still on the wrong side of the track, on the wrong down into Schloss Gold, but superior momentum. DJ blasts his way on through.
And that's the benefit of running to the outside around that corner, around turn 3, as you can carry that momentum down the straightaway, as he is able to put Martin behind him here at this point, and that is Karapetian up ahead that he's going to try to move on by as the Audi brings its way down through Rauch right now, and we see that single file battle starting to take place and sort itself out a little bit, a brief moment of reprieve for these drivers.
I've been keeping an eye at the gap towards the front, still about half a second between Naoyox and race leader Baldwin, and Boothby only about a second and a half further behind as we jump back up towards that number 47. Jaroslav Honzik, his fellow Veloce stablemate, starts to put the pressure on as they rise up in towards turn number 1. And I did mention earlier, former Guitar Hero world champion George Boothby. I've got to wonder, clearly quick with the fingers, but quick with the hands and the feet as well.
Yeah, we'll have to see just how he's able to do, holding on to podium position there. As we've got to come back to this battle. Patterson now starting to get involved as well. Suzuki and Solidov not letting that battle go anywhere at the moment. Solidov going to hold on, though, being able to run that Porsche out very, very far wide. And look at that gap, just extra momentum, as now here comes an attack on Suzuki. Suzuki's going to defend the line. Patterson tries to get up the middle and steal a move away.
And this time, I don't think that there's going to be much change, but it's the run down into the next braking zone where potentially things will start to build up once again. We knew the mid-pack was going to be wild by the margins in qualifying. They're getting a good sense for how each other race right now. Don't forget, 30 minutes to the next race. They've got a bit more time to knock the 10 rings out of each other as a bit of a slip up further behind. I wonder if Jimmy Broadbent got mixed up in something else.
And it looks like Dan Terry here, Denise Pope as well, farther back in the field. But that pink that you talked about earlier, Arjuna, always good to be able to see that on a car. Makes it very easy for us commentators to be able to distinguish that. Pope currently running in 21st places. I think you were right, that was Jimmy Broadbent that had a problem. But now another Maserati having a problem down through Firth.
That might have been Schultz, and yeah, unfortunate to see Jimmy have the issues. I was wrong the first time that it wasn't him. I was right the first time that it was him. So 50-50 chance, flip the coin no matter how you look. 3/10 between those top two as they run out of turn 1 though, and now as George Boothby continues to feel the pressure from behind. At what point does Niels Naoyox, DJ, decide that he wants to start battling? I get the sense that given that they're building the gap to some very strong drivers behind, you'll wait till maybe the final 5 minutes of this race.
Yeah, just hold off here a little bit. Don't overrun the tires. You talked about that tire preservation earlier in the broadcast, Arjuna. I think that's the plan here, is to just wait it out as much as possible and try to have some good grip in the tires before the final parts of the race come alive, so that on the last 2-3 laps you really start to able to push.
Yeah, and you know, we saw drivers need tires in that qualifying session, which was just 10 minutes. You don't want to burn through your equipment too early, as we'll take a look at the purple replay of, well, I think this is going to be what happened to no longer the man in the shed, Jimmy Broadbent, now the professional racing driver, Jimmy Broadbent, down the hill in towards Schloss Gold. You can see him try and set up with a switchback to the inside, and he manages to spin himself only around. I've got to say, that was quite courteous in the end.
It really was. You're going to make a little bit of a mistake there, maybe a little bit of an over-eager move. I love seeing that aggressive crossback, though, but it looked like that gap was always going to close there for Jimmy Broadbent. We focus back in on the battle for P3, though, as welcome to the party Addison here at this point. That all-blue Maserati looking particularly strong and aggressive on the back of Hansnick.
And shout out to Addison for picking a different livery so it could be slightly easier for us in the commentary booth to figure out what's going on. Naoyox and Honzik are running the same livery, so at the start could have been a little bit confusing to tell the two apart. Addison with a great run up out of turn 3, which is cambered off slightly as you rise up to the inside curbing, but then on the power down comes back towards you as you begin the run down in towards turn number 3. So Addison going to continue to try and work as Denise Pope, well, now trying to defend, as I think that's Mr. Git looking the long way around.
Yeah, going to try to send it the long way around. A little bit squirrely on the brakes as they came down into the braking zone, and a little bit of how you doing coming from behind. That was Schultz getting into the back there of Pope, but the two KTMs now going to be in a straight drag race as they make their way down the back straightaway into Schlossgold. Again, almost leaning on each other. This looking very, very aggressive driving through the field. Pope still going to hold to the inside. Schultz going to try to look at a little bit of a run as there they go. The number 78 Porsche now looking at a little bit of an attack now that that was Schultz delayed a little bit coming through the corner.
Yeah, we do have two Porsches in the field, we should mention, and they're both different. One is the Porsche 911 GT2 RS Club Sport Evo. The other is the Porsche 935. They, as far as I'm aware, do actually have, if not identical engines, very similar, 3.8 liter 6-cylinder boxers, but yeah, it's just the body shape that's a little bit different between the two of them. As back up towards the podium fight, and still George Boothby continuing to lead, but now 3 seconds behind the top two.
Yeah, he's losing time here, and if I am Jaroslav Hanzik, I am very much starting to look at trying to get ahead, because I do not want to let Niels Naoyox and Baldwin run away from me here at this point, but it just doesn't look like he's got the get up and go to be able to challenge Boothby, as Boothby's just holding on to that position. That Mercedes looking very quick in a straight line, and I think that's part of what is keeping the number 7 behind.
Yeah, and again, both of these cars are turbo powered. The Maserati has a 3-liter twin-turbo V6. The Mercedes has a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 because, of course, bigger car, much like its GT3 counterpart, has a bigger engine than much of the competition. But in terms of power, they're not too different, and of course then you get some BOP that comes on top of that as well. So ultimately it's just the relatively different characteristics that you would expect to see. The rear wing on this GT2 Mercedes, especially when you compare it to the GT3 DJ, it stands so much taller. You can tell it's just a very different aerodynamic package.
Yeah, it's a different design. It's a different idea about how to approach those aerodynamics, and that's exactly what GT2 competition is really striving to do and bring to it. As there you saw Jaroslav trying to take a little bit of a better run, narrower line coming through turn 1, trying to keep the pressure here on George Boothby, but again, that straight line speed of the Mercedes, you wouldn't think with that super high rear wing creating drag that it would be able to have that. Little bit late into the corner, little bit of oversteer there that Hanzik was going to have to control, and that's going to cost him a chance at the Schlossgold.
Just a little bit, but ultimately give and take. It's now a chance for Honzik to try and regroup. Addison hasn't really made inroads since we saw that pretty decent exit from him. Slightly further behind, seemed like a side-by-side moment between Bischoff and Noller, KTM versus Audi, both of them running as the best of their respective manufacturers. I'd be quite curious to hear what certain people are thinking they'd want to drive as their first car in this GT2 pack. I'll be quite honest, I have to flip a coin between which one of the Porsches I want to drive.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there about that. I'm not normally that much of a Porsche driver. The rear engine design tends to throw me off a little bit, but just the bodywork on those cars in particular, absolutely fantastic to be able to see. But I've got to say, for me, I'd want to try out the KTM. I just think that thing looks aggressive, it looks fierce, it looks mean, and I'll tell you what, it looks good on the sim, but check it out in real life, because that was the real head turner when we had it at the Indy 8 Hour earlier this year.
Yeah, and again, these cars just look so aggressive that I think it's one of those things where hopefully people get to go see them in person sooner rather than later. We ride from the nose camera of the Audi, which is particularly aggressive in my opinion. The way the aerodynamics at the front all seem to overlap and work with one another as Noller just continues to run his way behind the KTM. KTM does, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's the kind of car that looks quite small, but then you put it up against the rest of the GT2 class and it doesn't look out of place.
No, it really doesn't. And, it just, to me, it looks as a sports car should, as Noller's going to take that look down to the inside, not able to do it. But a wiggle there from Bischoff is going to throw it off, and a bigger wiggle coming around the corner here. Noller for Audi Sport going to try to take advantage coming down into Rauch right now, but just not able to get it. But to my point about that KTM, it looks fierce, it looks aggressive, it looks cutting edge in the way that it is, and it's kind of one of those things that if you ask a kid to draw what you think a race car would look like racing in GT competition, that to me is what you would imagine.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? And that's what I think we all want in race cars, is the little kid in us to be satisfied and happy, because most of us had posters of them up on our walls growing up, and some of us still have posters of them on our walls even now that we allegedly have grown up just a little bit, looking off the back of George Boothby, who did, by the way, end up winning the SRO Esports Championship in Europe, the Mobileye GT World Challenge Championship last year in the Ferrari. So we know how strong he can be. He's capable in these sprint races as well, which is important because defending is something you've really got to be able to do, as Yardier has the look up the inside.
He's going to send it down the inside, but as we've said before, momentum carrying around that outside line for Boothby in the Mercedes. And I think that move there from Yardier may have set up Addison on a move. He's going to look around the outside, going down into Schlossgold. Side by side as a battle of the late breakers. That is going to be Addison trying to carry momentum, but Yardier shuts the door.
Yeah, and I think that was all just set up by good runs for both of the two Maseratis following out of turn number one. And so Yards went up the inside, Addison went around the outside, and Boothby ran exactly the line that he needed to run in order to maintain the position. Margin up to your leaders, though, continues to grow lap by lap by lap. It's now 4 seconds and counting between second and third positions. When will Nils Naujoks go on the attack? Well, I said 5 minutes ago. I'm surprised he hasn't gone for it just yet.
I'm surprised as well. He's keeping that gap at about 0.2 of a second, and we haven't seen it grow or compress here at this point. So maybe he is in final push mode with lap times at about 1:30. We're looking at 3 laps to go as they cross the line. Is that there you see Yardier taking another look. Luke Addison, the South African, trying to be able to just hold on to the back of this. I liked what I saw here out of Luke coming up into Remus on the last lap. Wasn't too aggressive. He saw Hanzik look to the inside and tried to carry momentum around the outside. If there was contact or there was a failure, to be able to take that approach. Slow run there through the corner. Dan Suzuki back in the battle here with Martin and Solidov up ahead of him.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, by the way, did we tell the marshals, the steward, that we don't need to monitor track limits today, because we're running about as wide as we can through every bit of the track. Even look up here on the run into turn 3. They're almost full tires outside of the white line. Dan Suzuki gives a shove to the Porsche in front of him, receives a shove from the KTM behind, but bumper cars makes no difference as we scamper over the very top of the track. About 60 odd meters of elevation change, and we begin the plunge down into turn number 4.
Yeah, this wonderful roller coaster that leads from the highest point on the track down to the lowest point. You just feel that momentum as it carries along. A bit of a wiggle there for Suzuki in the Mercedes, trying to close down on that number 96 Porsche up ahead of him. Just not quite able to get it. I've got to imagine with the straight line speed of the Mercedes, we could be looking at a move here coming into Remus or Schlossgold. That's probably Suzuki's best opportunity.
And don't forget open setups. I wonder how many of these drivers have actually been able to dial in their cars on the short notice that they've had to get ready for this. So it's an interesting factor. Dan Suzuki's also now had a bit of a shove at the front. Is that going to act as a parachute? Aerodynamics may be impacted. Who knows? But I think what we do know is 2 laps to go through the entirety of the field. Although maybe at the front, Nils Naujoks doesn't really have the opportunity to go for it. James Baldwin running exactly the lines that he needs to do, and Naujoks with 1 more lap after this to try and get his way forward.
He's just got to play defense here, and what I like out of Baldwin is I'm not seeing the massive sort of dragon moves, trying to break the draft. I'm not seeing a lot of, I don't want to say blocking, but covering off the lines. Baldwin's just driving to the absolute extent that he can and forcing Naujoks to do this the old-fashioned way, and it's working here at this point.
Yeah, and I love that Nils Naujoks and James Baldwin, 2 top-level SRO esports drivers, are of course at the front and running away and maybe we should do some SRO Esports GT2 stuff. You know, I'm just suggesting, throw it into the mix, let these drivers let loose. The only problem is that Niels Najoks and James Baldwin haven't been giving us as fun of a fight as we've had behind. Is that going to change as we get ready to go onto the final lap of the race? Let's find out.
Well, it is time for full aggression here for many of the drivers, including Yarnier and Addison Najoks and Bischoff, Marco Bischoff here at the same time, as they will cross over the stripe to get the white flag. 1 lap to go, and there comes a wide run for Najoks, trying to carry as much momentum as possible, but he's still about a car length and a half, 2 car lengths behind.
What was I saying about track limits? Najoks thought they were more a suggestion than anything. Looks up the inside, but does not commit, and Baldwin half shuts the door on the entry, then on turn-in. He gets a pretty poor exit, all things considered, but you just see the grunt pulls away, and Najoks will have to go deep if he wants to get past.
Yeah, he's going to have to really send this, and I think his prime opportunity to be able to do that is going to be down through the infield section. You see him come back to drivers left a little bit, try to get a better line through the corner, trying to hold it as much as he can. Let's see what he can do here. Does he take a look going down into Rauch? No, he's going to stick it in line.
Holds, but there is still a potential for a mistake, an opportunity for Najoks to pounce, and you see him trying to set something up, but some understeer, some dirty air, and the aero wake from the car in front. James Baldwin's held Najoks behind, and now 2 more corners to go.
He's just got to run these absolutely perfectly. These are not high opportunity places to make an attack for Niels Najoks. He is running out of time. He is running out of track. As James Baldwin comes out of the final corner here at this point, gets on the loud pedal in that Mercedes GM2, and for the first time here for the GT2 series on ACC, it is James Baldwin that takes victory.
Shouldn't be a surprise, I think, that these were 2 at the front, and James Baldwin able to do enough to hold on. Rest of the drivers will make their way on through. Boothby holds on to that 3rd position behind Bischoff, doesn't get past Noller on the run to the line. But all the drivers in the mid-pack have so many stories, I think, to tell us about crazy GT2 experience.
Yeah, they certainly do. As look at this, the battle back with Jimmy Broadbent, Git, Pope, everybody's just trying to sort themselves out. Broadbent looking for a big move on Git, coming down into Rint. Is he going to be able to send a last lap maneuver here to try to get that 20th position away from the KTM? Git getting on the power here in the number 21. Broadbent pulls to the outside. It's going to be close, but it's not going to be enough. Git holds on to P20.
Jimmer gave it a good go, but could not work his way on through. And that was a great way to get things underway, not just with the GT2s, but DJ, the Red Bull Ring, it definitely delivered.
It definitely delivered exactly the kind of racing that we thought. Maybe not as much side-by-side down through the infield as we suspected, but once again, a great track combination and a great group of cars coming out here to see this GT2 action. This is exactly what was promised by SRO.
Yeah, and I like that we've done this with so many of these new releases, right? Because it gets us excited. It does. We get people from all over the sim racing community, not just people from SRO Esports, but content creators of all skill levels. They have a lot of fun. And, well, Jimmy Broadbent had, I think, some fun, but also some misery along the way, too.
Yeah, certainly did, and that's to be expected. As you said, these drivers not having all of the time to prepare necessarily. I mean, when we talk about SRO Esports competition, we have to remember that these drivers are spending days upon days prepping the setup, practicing, doing all of those things. And this is much more of a showcase of an event where we're not necessarily going to be spending all that much time. So it's a real testament here to the talent pool in this field that we didn't see a massive race-ending incident for drivers.
Yeah, because that would have been quite normal in SRO Esports, wouldn't it have been? So they've at least been able to clear that bar. Serious sim racing does tend to be a little bit, let's say, sweaty. We try quite hard. Now, though, we ratchet things up, right? Drivers have some experience. They know what the track feels like. They have to qualify again, so they have to flip the switch, right? Go from qualifying to race, now back to qualifying. And after the 10-minute session is done, DJ, 30 minutes of racing. And imagine if drivers are struggling on tires at the end of that one, they're going to be in even more pain at the end of this one.
Yeah, that's going to change the calculus here a little bit. Adding that extra 10 minutes onto the race really going to change things up in the way that they're going to approach the race. And I think particularly here for a lot of these drivers that are in the non-Mercedes GT2s, they're really going to have to change the way that they think about it. Maybe a quick setup change here to dial out some downforce to try to get a little bit more straight line speed, or potentially maybe do the reverse of it here, Arjuna. Dial in the downforce where they're able to take attack over those Mercedes through the infield sections of this circuit and try to gain speed in the slower speed corners to try to counteract what appears to be the dominant straight line speed from the Mercedes AMG.
And I do wonder what someone like Niels Naujoks has to say about this update in particular, because he has written the guide, quite literally, for commentators trying to get up to speed with Assetto Corsa Competizione. Goes into real detail about the tire model and its ever-evolving nature. Of course, Kunos working alongside SRO and Pirelli to bring the new spec tires every single year. Is that something that maybe the drivers are thinking, oh, our pressure targets are slightly changing around now, and what do they have to do to slightly set the cars up to get to that? I'm also, don't quote me on this, because I don't have access to the DLC just yet, I'm pretty sure that by the nature of these cars, they're probably also less complex to set up than the GT3 counterparts.
I can confirm that they are less complex to set up and they are less complex to drive as well. As I said a little bit earlier, these cars, when I originally saw them back down in St. Pete 2 years ago, they were described to me as a little bit more of a point-and-shoot car, a little bit less downforce coming on through, a little bit more of a standard car in the way that you do it, less leaning on the downforce through the corners. And so it makes it for a different driving experience for everyone. So they're going to feel things out here a little bit more at this point. They're going to get a better idea of how these cars are going to run in the race. And in this 5-10 minute break that we have before qualifying, I definitely guarantee you a little bit of setup changes going on.
I also kind of have to wonder that this car intended for, you know, the amateur driver who's making that step up. This car has less downforce than a GT3 car, but it has downforce still. You see the dive planes at the front, the little aero features that they have. Trusting downforce is difficult. It's something where you've just got to believe that it's going to be there, right? You go into a corner as fast as you can and, oh good, the magic force worked, and oh, if it didn't, then you're off and into the wall. The GT2 cars from that regard, I guess, are probably quite difficult through some of the faster speed corners. That middle sector, for example, DJ, the double left-hander, we saw quite a few of those Maseratis off on the right-hand side. Now, I know they may have had some contact and some assistance, but it does go to show that they're still struggling, maybe, to get to grips with the car in those sections.
Yeah, I think very much so. I mean, they have to feel out what this is, and for a lot of these drivers that are so used to running a GT3 where you're able to lean on that downforce more, you've got to recalculate your brain a little bit in the way that you run through those corners. We saw a couple of times, keep your eye on the brake lights coming down into that infield section through Rauch and in through Wirth, that both of those corners, you're having to trail brake a little bit more. You're having to upset the balance of the car a little bit more to gain that rotation through the corner, and that's a different style of driving. You take away that downforce, that's a little bit of a driver aid when you think about it, and so you're kind of having to physically manhandle the car through those sections.
And of course, these cars do have driver aids that you have to understand how to get the most of as well, right? Which is a really big part of GT3 racing too. So many different complexities that go even into a car like this. The one thing that I'm not sure about, but I'm kind of now wondering, is GT3 cars have gotten to the point where a new Ferrari 296 is upwards of $1 million with the parts that you need to actually go racing. Now, fortunately, we don't have to pay that in the virtual world, but how much is the GT2 car compared to that?
I don't have the identical price point, but I do know it is intended to be a step below GT3 racing so that you are able to get the experience of top-level GT racing without having to pay the full price of it. As you said earlier, this is really designed for a lot of amateurs trying to make that step up into GT3 to continue to try to bridge the gap. And that's one of the things that SRO has really done a great job of as we talk about building up the ladder as they go, is just slowly but surely adding on these different places that you can feel more comfortable in the car, get an idea of what it's going to do as you progress up through, so your skills as a driver evolve as the cars themselves continue to evolve and go up through the field.
Yeah, and it's not just there where I think SRO does a lot, but let's talk about the esports side of stuff as well, right? Where, of course, we have all of our different sprint championships of different regions. We have the endurance championship as well, which sees the globe come together and race across some of the best racetracks in the world. But more recently, SRO bridging that gap between virtual and reality by not only now for a couple of years over in Europe, we've been running the Fanatec GT Pro Championship. Forgive me for getting the name wrong, but basically the place where real drivers go into the virtual world and get real points for the championship. Last year, we added the SimPro Championship on top of that, where virtual racing happened in person, but with the esports drivers out there, and I think that's such a cool thing. And DJ, I love that SRO just continues to do more of that.
Yeah, we continue to innovate. We continue to bring all of those together, and let's look ahead to later on. I mean, the SRO, the FIA Motorsport Games, is SRO is so integrally a part of on the esports side of it, putting esports competition right alongside the many other multitudes of racing disciplines that come out. We continue to just build the synergy in between real racing and sim racing and bring everything together. Of course, the PRI Esports Arena that I was lucky enough to be able to be at with Ash Vandelay earlier this year as well, bringing professional race car drivers as well as professional sim racing drivers to the PRI convention in Indianapolis. We just continue to roll this out together, and it's both of these worlds, Arjuna, that you and I love so much that continue to have great synergy together, and it just continues to lead for a more and more exciting tomorrow for both the world of motorsports and esports.
Yeah, now you go even back to 2022, right, where we had at Indianapolis the ROG Arena. We had the crossover event during the Indy 8 Hours. What Mike Yao told me, who's been a part of all of the in-person events over in Europe, is that our ROG Arena was much larger than the Fanatec Arena was, which gave us a little bit more space and comfort. So I'm just saying, let's get that back in for this year, and let's do that a little bit more, potentially.
We'll have to see what that is. Stay tuned to the SRO social media as well for all of that to be able to get those updates. We've got about a minute left to go, though, before we're ready to head back out on track, get qualifying again for this second race. And I think here, Arjuna, this is going to be probably a little bit more interesting, as now that drivers have had the chance to acquaint themselves with the cars, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating to be able to see what they can do. And the other thing to keep in mind, drivers can change cars.
I think what we should do, though, is we should right now send a message to Niels Najoks, to James Baldwin. You're starting at the back. You've got to work your way on forward. They've got 30 minutes to do so, DJ. Let's have some fun here. Come on.
Let's have some fun with it. Make it interesting for our commentators. That's really what we want to see have happen. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that as well. As we get ourselves back in right now, there it is. 10 minutes on the clock for qualifying. We follow Josh Martin, the Scotsman, in the RTR Projects KTM. Going to bring that well around.
Here we go for the second qualifying session, and it's the same length as that first one, right? So it's another 10 minutes onto the clock, and therefore around 6 minutes of the time actually complete, around 3 or 4 minutes left to go. Expect maybe drivers to come back in and to switch tires at some point. Have also seen on the left side that there are a couple of changes in car. I'm not sure how many at the front have changed. Looks like George Boothby has switched over to a Porsche. The problem is, DJ, I don't want to say which Porsche because I've got a 50% chance of being wrong.
Exactly. You're not entirely sure. Dan Suzuki here looks like he's going to be staying in that Maserati, the number 13 for LP Racing, going to bring that car around. Oh, no, excuse me. He changed. He was in the Mercedes. Thank you to Mike Yao, our director, for letting me know on that. There is Boothby. Let's take a look here and see as he comes down through the corners. That is the fancy one. That's the rear end of joy, as I like to call it.
It's not a bad way to describe it. That very sleek shape at the back, and as we mentioned, has the very same engine as far as we know as the 911 GT2 RS Club Sport Evo, a 3.8 litre 6-cylinder boxer. And I was at Rennsport Reunion at the end of last year, which is a celebration of all of Porsche's great race cars, and I've got to say, the sound of a Porsche race car engine, there is something special about it. There's a Porsche Symphony is one that I would quite like to be a part of.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you hear those Porsches absolutely wail out across the track as Boothby didn't like what he had there. Is going to pull off to the side, maybe go back down into pit lane, not entirely sure. Zach Patterson here in the 911 machine, going to bring that car around, going to get a nice little helping of draft up in front of him as he continues to work his way on and through. 7.5 minutes on the clock right now at this point, so drivers certainly want to try to be able to get themselves together as they go. Let's see if they're able to qualify. As we saw here, qualifying a little bit more important than I think we necessarily thought it was, given the outright speed and availability of passing zones here at the Red Bull Ring.
It was also just because of the breakaways that we saw, right? So that's a bit of a slippery situation through the second left-hander in the middle sector, and cars just trying to regather a little bit of composure and get themselves back up to speed. Patterson went for from the Audi over to the Porsche. Looks like Jack Noller has stayed in the four-ringed Audi, which has that very, very aggressive, almost Dakar style air scoop at the rear part of the car to give it just a little bit of cooling, of course, down on towards the engine. First times have started to come on in, but realistically, I think we are going to see them start to tumble quicker sooner rather than later. 129.207. Currently the provisional benchmark, and right as I say that, there we go, sold it off 1 second faster, who switched over from the Porsche to the Maserati.
Yeah, still seeing a lot of Maseratis being preferred here in the field, although it seems like there are quite a few more Porsches right now. Samir right now in the 812 KTM. Currently the second KTM in the field is Martin in the number 89, is going to lead the way for that. Suzuki also making that switch. Looks like that car may have suited him a little bit more, as he will be in third place, get in the Maserati up into sixth as well. Your highest place Mercedes will be Karapetian in fifth place, about 1.3 seconds off as he brings the braking down into turn 3.
Again, I would suspect that we'll see the margins close. And have James Baldwin and Niels Naujoks listened to me? Because they're still sitting in pit lane apparently right now and haven't gone out onto track just yet. So maybe we will get a bit of a last to first challenge from them. And right on cue, James Baldwin's leaving the pit lane. He just had to go and disappoint me, didn't he?
Yeah, he just had to. Oh, no, he's gone back. He just came back into pit lane. So maybe we've got a little bit of excitement yet to come. Samir Folk, though, coming across the line right now. Let's see if that's able to improve. Oh, I'd call that an improvement. Still 0.8 of a second off of that top time in the number 2, but a very good second place run there for him.
Yeah, no, I think we'll see the times again start to tumble down as we get deeper into the session. The overtake Maserati of Yannick Hosteen in through the first of those left-handers, the number 38 car, slides its way on through. 5 minutes left to go in the session, and again, remember, once that clock strikes 0, drivers can still complete the lap that they are on, but you need to have tires at that point in time. You will have the opportunity, if you want, to come back and come into pit road to get a fresh set of boots, but ultimately need to be out there with the pressure on, and the best really shine in those closing stages of qualifying. It's the reason why I'm not behind the wheel of one of these virtual race cars. I crumble under that kind of pressure.
Oh, I certainly do as well. I was never one of the drivers that could get through without minimal incident points. So there's a reason why I'm up at the commentary booth and not out on track with these drivers. But Dan Suzuki, who we follow right now, 0.6 of a second off of the best time set on the day. Going to be able to try to improve there. And there you see exactly what I was talking about earlier, coming down through Rauk, that tap of the brake lights there at that point, just trying to get that car to rotate a little bit more and to get that car to turn through the corner with the lack of downforce in these GT2 cars.
I'm really enjoying the way that they're having to manhandle these cars in some ways, right? Because you don't have the downforce through corners, so you try and get into the corner with a little less speed, ring the car to turn it as quickly as possible, and then square it up, get onto the power, and stab it into a straight line to get off the corner as quick as possible. I've got to say, it's a driving style adjustment that I don't necessarily think that I would have had opportunities to get to grips with so quickly, but it's one of those fundamental things that you've got to try and understand, as Martin Grady got the rear end stepping out on him down through the penultimate corner.
And maybe manhandling the car just a little bit too much there in that number 1 Maserati. That undoubtedly is going to cost him a couple of tenths of a second, but he's still going to be able to improve up into 4th place there for the number 1. Here is Michael Wolk, as he's going to come across the line in the Mercedes AMG. Let's see if he's able to put a good time down on the board. Looks like that's not going to count him for him. Boris Schank, Porsche Motorsports driver in the number 70. He's going to bring the car around through one of the drivers that is yet to set a time here. About half of the field yet to set a time. So a lot of flying laps, I've got to imagine. But Baldwin, Nyok still down in pit lane. They listen to us here, Arjuna.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going to be able to end up lining up. Boris Schank, the legend behind Low Fuel Motorsports, gets the time onto the board, or be at the slowest one so far. Okay, the lap times here are around 90 seconds or so, so you need around closer to 2 minutes to get back around. Boothby's on track. Baldwin and Honzik aren't, but Naujok's is. So some of the drivers are going to slightly disappoint us, but for Niels Naujok's, I guess we'll have to wait and see if he can keep it within the confines of the track still.
Yeah, that's the big thing here that drivers are going to have to watch out for. We talked about the sort of lack of track limits policing in the race itself, but in qualifying, if you pick up that off track, that will eliminate your lack. Denise Pope here making the switch over to Maserati in the number 79. Let's see if the Wild Things Racing driver is able to improve up into 9th place with that last lap. And with 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock, there will be 2 more attempts to be able to run. Here is your provisional pole seater, though, Jack Noller in the number 88.
Yeah, those margins still pretty tight, 65 thousandths, and then still a second back effectively to the edge of the top 10, so could still swing in any direction with these final laps. There's the Audi R8 LMS GT2 machine. Of course, Audi coming off winning the Dakar Rally in the electric car for the very first time. Really interesting to see the different ways that they continue to pursue different powertrains as well.
Yeah, very much so, but Dan Terry right now, Mentos Racing, kind of love that. Nice little paint scheme. We talked about some of the interesting ones on there, and the swoops on the side of that car, certainly kind of going into the back of that. Oh, as Noller is going to be able to possibly increase his time here as he comes across the board. It's only going to be by about a half a tenth, but still a tenth of a second gap now between him and Soltov. That'll be good for him. We focus back on Dan Terry. Now Boris Schank, who comes across the line, still only 14th for the number 70.
Still got some time to go. It was great to see that Mentos livery, by the way. Made me feel like a child a little bit inside as well. And if you're wondering where this second Porsche is coming from, this 935, well, it's not technically part of the GT2 racing series as far as I'm aware, but the Porsche 935, of course, a legendary race car going back to the mid-1970s, early 1980s. And so Porsche actually revived it at the end of the last decade, so it was 2019, 2020, where they sort of mixed and matched bobs from every little different bit. The car is based on a 911 GT2 RS with bodywork resembling a 935, LED taillight shared with the 919 hybrid, side mirrors from the 911 RSR, color displays from cockpit interior bits from the GT3R, the race car, of course, that's available on Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's effectively a spare part special.
Yeah, it really kind of is, but let's see what kind of time it's able to put down here at this point. Schank comes across the line. That's a quick car, no matter how it is put together, as it's going to jump up into 13th place. Josh Martin, RTR Projects, in the number 89. KTM is going to cross over the line here at this point. Martin jumps all the way up to P3.
What a great time with that pressure on. We were mentioning how important it is. Checkered flag is out. No other improvements will be allowed if you haven't already started the lap that you're on. As Zach Patterson in that Porsche, of course, switched over from the Audi, 1.3 seconds off and running behind a whole handful of drivers as they cycle down in towards those penultimate couple of corners. Dan Terry's trending upwards, but he's currently the slowest driver of them all anyway, so the jump up in time, maybe not going to be a jump up in position. Who behind him is going to maybe find some improvement as Terry stuck down in 17th.
Yeah, Terry looked like he had a big slide coming through the final corner there, and that's what threw him off. And again, you know, Arjuna, you talked about the sausage curbs on this circuit. We've got to remember that they're not only there to prevent those off tracks and those course cuts, but they can really affect the handling of the cars as they come up and over them. And it's also not only the sausage curbs on the outside, but some of the interior anti-cut curbs, particularly coming down through those last 2 corners.
Yeah, there's a balance, right, that you're always trying to strike. A stiffer aero platform is going to give you a stiffer platform gives you more aero performance, but then it's going to be a little bit worse on those curbs. In a track like this, aero performance actually somewhat important because there's a lot of course, some fast speed sweepers. You're trying to maintain as fast a car through the straights as possible. So I think there's quite a few different things to keep in mind, although I think for that second qualifying session as compared to the first, because drivers had switched over cars, DJ, I think there was a lot more unpredictability in terms of understanding the car behavior.
Yeah, I think there was as well. And once again, this just being a showcase, some of these drivers just experimenting, having a good time and trying to figure out what's going to run best for their driving style, what's going to run best for them over the course of the circuit. But it is going to be Noller leading from Solotov, Martin, and Suzuki, your top four. Once again, it's Maserati that leads the way with the preferred cars up into the top 10. But the change this time, it's KTM that looks like it may be the challenger. And of course, Noller in the Audi as well. But I love to see in the top 11, we have all manufacturers represented.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure exactly where both of those Porsche models, the 911 GT2 RS Club Sport Evo along with the 935, are going to stack up. But it's great to see the diversity, all the different drivers here willing to go and experiment with the different cars. And yeah, even more exciting, I think, at least in my opinion, that as we now get towards the mid-pack here, the edge of the top 10, we're starting to get towards, well, the drivers that finished towards the front of race number 1. Nauyok's 18th, Baldwin 19th, and then Honzik down in 20th, Boothby 23rd. They're going to have to carve their way through the field, and we talked about it at the start of race number 1. DJ, short formation lap, not much time to get some temperature into the tires.
Yeah, you've really got to be aggressive here. Don't be surprised if you see quite a bit of weaving coming down onto this straightaway and through the last couple of corners. And also testing the brakes, because that's the biggest thing, is you've got a quick blast to turn 1 and then up into turn 3. Those brakes are going to be relatively cool by the time you get into that area, so you've got to make sure you can do everything you can to make sure those brakes are up to temperature and that they're going to latch and grab correctly on those rotors. But here as they come down through the corners right now, getting ready to go. A little bit more of a jumbled up race here, Arjuna. Probably going to be a little bit more chaotic.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I think the question is, for those watching in chat, who do you think comes out on top? Because I would wager it may not be someone starting inside of the top 10.
I doubt it as well. There you see that brake checking that we kind of talked about. Not necessarily brake checking, but just brake moving back and forth, trying to get those brakes up to temperature. But now it's going to be Noller and Solodov looking here as they cross over the finish line. Eyes going up towards the flag stand once again. As for the second time today, we go green from the Red Bull Ring, as it's going to be Noller having a little bit of an advantage over Solodov. 3-4 wide, farther back through the field. It's double file as they try to sort themselves out. A little bit of contact. That may even have been 5 wide.
I mean, we had a clean lap 1, turn 1 in the previous race, so drivers thought, you know what, let's not keep it so clean this time around. At least everyone comes out on the other side, pointed in the wrong direction. But on that climb up in towards turn number 3, the overtake machine looking up the inside, as there we go, 3 wide behind Denise Pope in the middle. I think that might have been Boris Schauk, got spun around. The Mentos machine got turned wide and run off the road. Hectic to get this race underway.
Yeah, Grady here trying to take an attack right now. Is that, I believe, is going to be a couple of cars moving down to the inside there. It looks like the top 3 have remained the same. A little bit of sorting out farther back through the field. A little bit of contact on corner exit as they come down through Schlossgold. Martin Grady still trying to hold off here to the best of his abilities, looking down to the inside of the drivers in front. Here is Samir trying to see what he is able to get done as well. That's a battle with Gid.
Well, do you want some more excitement? We're here in the Styrian Mountains. I'm watching Jardier's stream right now, and the great thing about Assetto Corsa Competizione is weather predictions. DJ, we are 15 minutes away from rain in a 30-minute race.
Oh, you love to see it. Let's see how these GT2s are going to handle themselves when the heavens open up here in the hills of Austria. Let's go as they cross over the line here. Great camera angles once again provided by Mike Yao. Samir Folk trying to hold on as best as he can. Jimmy Broadbent able to get by him in that Mercedes. Broadbent's now going to send the attack up on Git in front of him. Denise Pope there in that bright pink machine as well. There is Git that you see Broadbent lurking behind in that Mercedes.
Right, so is Jimmy Broadbent going to run his way to the inside of the Maserati? No, he's going to shape back into line as behind Denise Pope. That looked like Schultz in the Audi that was trying to have a look. We haven't seen a real breakaway form just yet. Behind the overtake number 38 in 5th position, there is now a bit of a gap starting to build in front, but realistically, everyone not really getting concertinaed out just yet, as down the hill into Schlossgold, we're fanning out 3 wide behind.
Yep, as drivers being aggressive here early on, as they were in the previous race as well. Folk and Niox trying to sort themselves out a little bit, as Niox looks like he's able to get on by him here. But now with Git, it looks like Jimmy Broadbent starting to assert some more pressure. But as we saw in the previous race, that Maserati looking a little bit better through the twisty bits, the straight line speed of the Mercedes coming into play.
Who's going to be the most charging of the bulls here in that final sector? Do think that Niels Naujoks is already almost up into the top 10. I mean, look at that little paddle pack that's seemingly around 15th or so and behind in the final sector. I mean, no matter where you look, action in this GT2 pack release stream that these drivers, I think, have been enjoying and relishing the opportunity to be a part of. We've only had now, the 2 laps complete. Gap at the front still pretty close between those in contention. Do feel as though we are in a situation where the chaos is only going to build, and with that rain on the horizon, timing of potential pit stops is going to be crucial.
Yeah, and it's going to be a question here, as there we see the Maseratis doing a little bit of battle there. Grady and Houston trying to sort themselves out with Carapazzian behind, just trying to lead that out. Grady's going to run a little bit wide. That's going to throw him off. James Baldwin trying to make moves farther back in the field, going to get by the Porsche of George Boothby.
On board with James Baldwin, has some of those trophies behind from his SRO esports successes, includes a track map as well. You can see him trying to go through the information to see where he is in the field, to judge how much work he's still got to do. You've got to love it. And I've got to say as well, you'll see the strategy that the racecraft of Baldwin, not just on track, but in pit lane as well, with when he decides to come down to the lane. The Mercedes of Carapetian slides on through, and now as Haustein boxed out Grady through 2. That looks like Naujoks that got very, very slippery for a moment. We cycle up towards the penultimate couple of corners, with Zach Patterson now tucked in behind as well.
Oh, and a look to the inside for Niox, trying to go around Patterson there. At that point, Patterson's going to get a little bit scared off the line, positioned to Niels Niox in the number 12.
Oh, and now Patterson gets tagged down through the final corner. Gravity falls away from you. The rear-engine Porsche was already trending, I think, into a slide, and not enough time to check up into the wall hard for the 911 machine. 911 numbered, and 911, of course, in terms of chassis as well. Slip off the track there from Carapetian in the number 73. Grady straight on through to take advantage.
Brady's going to take advantage, but if Carapetian's able to be later on the binders here, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to. He's going to try to carry momentum around the outside there of Remus, but it's not going to work. And look at that, Niels Niox, ever aggressive, down to the inside, trying to go for a 2-for-1.
Oh, as behind there was a car off, and it's Mr. Git who's getting it up into the wall, it would seem, and now trying to find a clean piece of tarmac to rejoin. Almost runs into the path of the oncoming Zach Patterson, I believe that was. Back down with this battle pack, though. I've got to say, Niels Naujoks with a masterclass, an education effectively showcased today on how to carve through the field. He's gone from effectively the back in towards what is 5th position, I think, at this point, and with a chance still to close towards the front.
And it's going to be harder and harder. The higher up he gets in this field, the better the competition will be. With Carpatzian there making a mistake, it looks like there. I think that's Samir Falk that's going to try to get a little bit of an advantage here coming down into Rent. No, he thinks better of it. Again, that's such a difficult corner to try to get that overtake in there at that point. He's going to hold in behind. A little bit of flash of the headlights there behind. That's not something we've seen. I think that was Yardier giving a little bit of a how you doing up to Broadbent in front of him.
That's probably just a friendly little lights flash, knowing Jards and Jimmy. A little bit of a banter between the two. Just keeping an eye on the weather forecast, by the way. We're about 5 minutes away from rain, and then 15 minutes away from cloud cover. So it's going to be a brief shower of rain. We've talked about how these cars have a lot more power than their GT3 counterparts, but less downforce. We've talked about how they have the need to manhandle them through some of the corners. They're going to be really struggling, I think, when the rain drops on these slick tires.
Yeah, they're going to be very, very sketchy there on that. I think it's probably going to be a situation where we're not going to see many drivers diving down into pit lane if we're only going to get about 5 minutes of rain. That's not really going to be worth your time. It's much more going to be a situation where you have just got to manage, where you've got to back off, and you have got to take this care of this car and bring it home.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm secretly hoping that somewhere the rain gods are are brewing up a master plan right now, and things will get just that little bit more intriguing. There's the stream, by the way, of Jaroslav Honzik. You can follow along with it on YouTube if you want to. You can see that weather, you can't really read it, but just above where the speed is off to the left, there's a box that the weather icons pop up in, which actually, as you now start to see the windshield wipers work, the drizzle start to drop, the switch has been flipped. It's raining in the Styrian Mountains.
Yes, it is, and look at this as they come across the line right now, trying to sort themselves out in front. That's going to be Haustein holding the line. Broadbent trying to go for a move down into Niki Lauda. That's not going to play itself out. Honzik tries to go for a move, but the rear end of the car steps away, and he barely holds on to it.
And now it's treacherous, right? Because we're slick tire racing as it starts to rain. Now Yox is already past Josh Martin. The charge continues. He's 5 seconds off of your leader with 22 minutes still to go. He's a very realistic chance to try and work on forward. This is a replay of what happened from Yardier's perspective. And oh, Yard's got a tag slapper, but just about brought it under control. And the smile never left his face.
No, it never did, and that is a result there of that exit curb that we talked about. The car just got a little bit unstable through there, and he was lucky to be able to hold on to it. But Niels Nyox right now trying to close on in on Dan Suzuki. 1.3 seconds the gap at the last time. Now it's already down to 7.5 tenths. Nyox just continues this charge through the field despite a little bit of a slide there through Verth as this rain continues to come down.
And this is where adaptability when it comes to the cars also plays into the weather, because if you can switch between cars, well, you could probably understand the grip changes underneath you a little bit quicker than if you were struggling to get to grip with the cars itself. So as they work down out of that final corner where we saw Patterson have that spill, it's raining quite hard, but clearly not hard enough for too many to come down to pit lane. Having said that, 2, 3, maybe 4 drivers coming on in. Honzik follows Karapetian and Haustein in, but at the front of the field, Soldatov brings the Maserati into the box.
All right, we are now going to see if this is the right call to come down into pit lane, or if it's better to just kind of be able to get out. Walk and Boothby also coming in, Naga as well also bringing it in. Niels Nyox, though, not coming into the rain. He wants Dan Suzuki. Had a little bit of a look coming down into Remus, but that didn't play out, and now they struggle for traction as the rain continues to come down, and they work their way down the back straightaway.
So the rain gods have done their rain dance, and now the drivers being forced to dance on the pedals and with their controls to figure it all out. Seems as though from this onboard perspective that Nyox is making adjustments to the in-car tools just to get it lined up to where he wants it to be through the gears. Fourth, holds at the very top of the rev range, down to third, trying to just make sure the rear tires aren't slipping too much through the corners, and you can see just how much he's having to fight the car. I'm keeping an eye on the stream, by the way, of Jardier just to see the weather update. We still have about 5 minutes of rain predicted, so that's where I think the gamble to come down pit lane has come from. They don't think the rain's disappearing in the next 1 or 2 laps.
No, they think that they're going to be able to gain that time back up, and from what we're seeing here from Nyox, this looks incredibly sketchy, as proved by Dan Suzuki, who goes off track, coming down through Rent, and that is a position over to Niels Nyox. The question is if he's going to be able to hold it here at this point, because all the slipping and sliding we've seen. Jack Noller up the front of the field, though, 6 seconds the gap. Martin comes down into pit lane, the latest to take the gamble.
And that was almost the race leader, all off the track, and it is Niels Nyox into the wall.
Oh, heavy damage. That car is crabbing massively there for him. He's trying to hold it together, but that is not good for Niels Nyox, as that could throw this, what could have been a fantastic race, away for him.
Well, he did the last to front challenge. He didn't succeed the last to first challenge, unfortunately. I still clearly, by the way, has enough speed to hold on to the back of Grady directly in front in identical machinery. Despite, yes, the front end of that car looking worse for the wear, and somewhere the Maserati spare parts department is getting the front bumper ready to go.
Yeah, they are. The question here is going to be Jimmy Broadbent behind him. Let's see if Broadbent's able to capitalize a little bit at Nyox's dissatisfaction here as they run. Noller continues to lead. Broadbent able to take that a little bit longer and wider. You can really see through the corners here on Niels Nyox. That car just screaming out in agony. The crabbing of the car, the lack of grip is courtesy of the rain. It is not good here for Nyox.
He does seem to have both suspension and bodywork damage, I can tell you, for Niels Naujoks. Wonder what his tire pressures must be like as well in these conditions, because cold conditions, also with the rain, surely they'll be feeling a little bit of pain. Dan Suzuki stays out there, and so seemingly is your race leader, so they are gambling that the rain, which will end in probably around less than 5 minutes time, isn't going to cost them too much. As expected though, Niels Naujoks with too much damage down to pit lane. Zach Patterson maybe with some damage to the ego.
Yeah, that looks like a little bit of a spin there. Again, in that Porsche, very, very easy to do when you're coming down into the corner. That rear engine design really helps you get off of the corner and helps you get a little bit more planted weight when you're talking about getting off the corner in the rain in particular. But it's very easy to get that sort of pendulum effect as it comes. James Baldwin, though, one of the drivers that did opt to come down into pit lane. Let's see what he is able to do. He's already been able to make up a position on Martin, runs in 14th place right now.
Yeah, this is going to be that crossover phase, right, where once the rain stops, the track's still wet, so it's going to take a while for the dry line to emerge, and with still 15 minutes to go. Half the race, yes, but it's not a very long time, is it? You can see just how hard it is sometimes when you're fighting to try and run the correct lines behind Jimmy Broadbent. Samir Fock now on the outside. Dangerous place to be in towards the double left-hander.
Oh, you can see that car squiggling as he comes down into the braking zone. The KTM trying to hold it right now. Broadbent contact as they come down through Rauch right now, and Broadbent's going to be able to hold on to the position.
That's a little bit naughty from Jimmy. He's learnt plenty from the real racing world, including just how to gently suggest to the driver behind that you should not try and go the long way around. So Jimmy just slightly leans on the KTM Expo and back into line, down into the penultimate corner. Will either driver head off the driver's right? No, at this point you're committed to staying out on the tires that you have. A piece of the curb and bollards have made it all around because drivers have been going all sorts of wide through those final couple of corners. Now back to the line. Almost half this race complete, DJ.
Where does the time go, Arjuna? Absolutely remarkable that we are halfway done. And now I think at this point, if you are a driver that opted to stay out, you have no intention of coming back down into pit lane. This is all about full commitment to it. But look at the gaps here. Solidov, one of the first drivers to come in, 21 seconds between himself and Git. That was it. Here's Tahinaga right now, trying to go side by side with Walk, and they're going to continue that battle coming down through the corner and into Rauch.
Oh, hip check there and into the grass. Just about holding on is the 44 machine, but now as Boris Schau gets involved in the LFM car, not going to be able to get on through, so he'll hold on to the position and of course slides back into line and tries to get to the inside.
He's going to try to get to the inside. That was a really good defense there by Walk. I've got to give him credit for that. He just drove his traditional racing line and didn't let Schalk get any sort of run. Schalk, though, going to have another little look down into Rindt. That's not going to play out as Naga is going to continue on here at this point. And you can see the compromise that these drivers are having to take on the rain line. ACC does a great job of modeling what that rain line is. Remember, it is slicker sometimes on the traditional racing line as you come up and over as the rubber on the track. Oh, but you got to watch out for the curbs as well, as Wolk just learned that lesson the wrong way.
And you are starting to see the track start to develop that little bit of a slick middle line where the drivers are running even as the rain continues to fall, albeit seemingly dissipating in intensity at this point. We are getting, by the way, to almost 7 p.m., so the sun has started to set and very much changed some of the perspectives that the drivers have to worry about, with blinding lights occasionally here with the sun coming down in towards you. On board for third position, though, as Dan Suzuki looks in the rearview mirror, and suddenly Martin Grady is there.
And remember, these are two drivers that did not come down into pit lane, so they are both out on slick tires. Grady with a big send coming up into the corner. Is he going to be able to get it turned? Yes, he is, but that allows for Suzuki to get the crossover. Unfortunately there, Grady able to get the momentum, and Suzuki's got to concede.
Down in towards that braking zone where gravity works against you here, and with the slick track you want to be a little bit earlier on the brakes to make sure you don't have that little bit of a moment where Suzuki was forced to go to the inside because he was a little bit too deep under the brakes. Grady holds on to second, and now only 4.5 seconds off of your race leader. I think we still have what is a three-way fight up towards the front.
Yeah, I think we do as well. Noller, though, looks like he's in pretty good control. 4 or 5 seconds the gap here at this point. Maybe that'll come down as the track begins to dry a little bit, as there you see on your screen the rain starting to lighten. Both Grady and Suzuki kicking the tails out there, coming through vert as they try to just hold on to it. My question's going to be is if Nola can keep this pace through the rain, if he can keep it through the transition, and if he can keep it through the inevitable dry that is to come.
Yes, the problem is, though, for the drivers that have stayed out there, you sometimes get the effect of graining, right, when you stay out there in these colder conditions, because the temperature just drops away from you and you continue to run. Question will be, when we start to see the dry tires start to be preferred again, how much life do they still have in them, and how much do they need to manage the car underneath them? Regardless, Grady seems to be a little bit quicker than Suzuki at this point in time, so he'll look to try and pull away, as behind them, off of the podium positions, Jimmy Broadbent and Samir Fock continue their little battle in the Mercedes versus KTM. Don't currently have it, DJ, like we did at the start, where all the manufacturers run up in the top 11, but that's mainly, I think, just because a couple of the Porsches on strategy are back down through the field.
Yeah, the majority of the Porsche drivers opting to come down and take those tires. Samir, though, right now trying to get a little bit of a good line. That is a lapped car in front of Jimmy right now, so that could present a little bit of wrench in the works, depending on how this battle plays itself out. But again, we're seeing the straight line speed of that Mercedes-AMG GT2 really come into play, as Jimmy's able to accelerate out of Remus, going down into Schlossgold, and really get the power down. But this is where that mid-engine design, that low slung design of the KTM should come into play. Samir should be able to close up here through the middle sector as Jimmy runs wide and Samir goes for it.
Small mistake, but big opportunity. Not done just yet, though. Second left-hander sees the long way around. Still presents a viable defensive opportunity. Broadbent has to get onto the brakes for just a moment to avoid running deep, but on the right-hander, on the exit of the sequence, has that position back once again. I do think, by the way, it has officially stopped raining. The wipers still needed because of all the spray being kicked up by some of these drivers. It does mean, though, that surely in the next couple of minutes we are going to start to see the dry tires start to come back in.
Yeah, we certainly will, and I've got to give credit there to Jimmy Broadbent. That was an incredibly brave defense. Once again, doing that preferred way of defending around this circuit, not driving offline to try to cut anybody off, just sticking to where you can. A little bit of a wiggle there coming out of Nicky Lauda, but he's going to keep it together. And I think Samir Fock here at this point is going to have to hold together. Porsche off, and they're going to streak on by him, so no worries about lap traffic for the moment.
Is that George Boothby?
I think it may have been, actually.
He's clearly not a fan of the Porsche.
No, really not, but I'll tell you who's a fan of the KTM. That's Samir Fock. Here we go, side by side, coming down the back straightaway.
And now on the inside, is it going to allow the KTM to go deep? He doesn't have the grunt off the corner to even hold alongside. Or maybe there was just a little bit of a blip of the throttle, a recognition that it's here in this middle sector where the move will come. The KTM may be just a little bit more nimble, a bit more agile in the twistiest sections of the track, but gets out-dragged by the superior top end of the Mercedes. The lines that Jimmy Broadbent is running right there, middle of the track, nowhere to go for the car behind.
No, that is defensive driving. That is worrying about the car behind you, and that it was exactly what was called there in that situation by Jimmy Broadbent. A good way to do it. It looks like Samir's got a little bit of a better run, though, coming off of Verth, but he's not going to be able to capitalize. A little bit of wheel spin coming up and over the curb on the exit of that corner. That's going to prevent him back a little bit, and he's going to have to wait another lap to try to get this run. Oh, he's coming into pit lane.
You know what I think might have been happening here? How long was that first race?
20 minutes. I don't think he recalculated the fuel.
I think that's what's happened to George Boothby, by the way. I've just been trying to keep an eye on the paddock, the virtual paddock, and see what's been happening. From Niels Nauyok's stream, I gather that currently Boothby has 0.6 liters to do the entirety of the lap from where we last saw him.
Yep, that's a miscalculation on the fuel, so that's going to scupper what could have been a great run there for your KTM driver. Meanwhile, great battle here going on at the moment. Looks like we've got Marco Bischoff trying to close in behind Karapetian in front of him.
It's into turn one, where you can now see we are starting to dry up, but not to the point where you can be confident, I think, into that opening corner. Bischoff gets the move done into turn one machine, but now has to try and out-drag the Mercedes on the climb up in towards that turn three complex. You can just see, though, that he's not going to have the chance to look alongside. It's behind, where potentially a look one of the Maseratis.
It's going to have a little bit of a look there at that point, but it's not going to play itself out. Let's see what they can do, though, as the loud pedal comes down here. Straight line speed of the Mercedes going to be able to help keep Carapetian away. And for the moment, Bischoff not going to be able to attack there coming into Schlossgold. They've got to be a little bit careful because that is Baldwin closing in behind and gets not too far behind them. There's the move for Bischoff as there's a little bit of wheel spin coming out of Schlossgold.
Carapetian slides wide, opportunity taken from the Maserati to get the move done. And now with more drivers down onto pit lane, maybe with that fuel concern in mind, who at the front is not going to be too concerned. Has come down to within 4 seconds between Noller and Grady. There's the look at your race leading Audi R8 LMS Evo. And with Grady, Suzuki and Broadbent and then Pope, the rest of the top 5, it is all the drivers that stayed out there and elected not to come into pit lane that find themselves in the decent spots.
Yeah, it looks like that was the right call, and that's something that we often see over the course of endurance racing. We as commentators think that it's the best option to come down into the pits and get those wet weather tires on, but these teams and drivers know how to read that radar, and if you're in for a short shower, if you have confidence in the car to be able to get yourself through that sketchy moment, you're going to find yourself in a better position whenever everything has come to an end. East Pope, though, in 5th place right now, courtesy of everything that's shuffled around. That's 7th place. She's had a bit of an error. She falls back down the field behind Yardier and Soledov.
And of course, I think those two drivers are the ones that came down to pit lane and are working their way on forward. So it goes to show the time discrepancy between pitting and not pitting. So Honzik 22 seconds behind Broadbent, not behind your race leader, just to clarify, behind Broadbent. Goes to show how it's all worked out. By the way, I think some of these shots showing just how much that the track is reflecting some of those little glimpses of water that you still have, and now increasingly 6 odd minutes left to go. That dry line is starting to be built in. Pope's got to watch behind because now another driver is trying to get on through. Carapetian, and now another one of the Mercedes. That might be James Baldwin.
Yep, this is what happens when you run out there on those wet weather tires, and they've gone a little bit too far. It just doesn't look like Denise has the grip, has the speed to be able to get things to go. She's going to fall back to 10th place. Thankfully, a 7-second gap back to Git, but I'm not sure if that's going to hold with the pace she's running here at this moment.
No, she was, I think, almost a full 7 seconds off of the fastest laps. You can see just how much less confidence that she has as compared to those in front that have been able to walk away to the start-finish line. But 6 minutes left to go. The bright pink, definitely not a car that can be missed. That is for sure.
No, not at all. Again, one of those things for us commentators that makes things...
Well, with 5 and a bit minutes still left to go, as Denise Pope runs there in that 10th position. Jack Noller leads by 4 seconds at the front, of course. Then Dan Suzuki, Jimmy Broadbent, and Jaroslav Honzik. Mr. Yardier tucked in behind them in 5th position. And there's James Baldwin, of course, who's been working his way forward through the field. These GT2 cars have definitely put on a show, and Porsche, now the first of them down in 14th spot. DJ, we still have all on the manufacturers running in the top 15.
We still do, so it may not be about the top 11 that we saw at the beginning of the race, but love to see that disparity once again. And now it looks like it's the Audi that's going to be able to be doing very, very well here behind the wheels of Noller, but the Maserati still a very, very good car, as it seems the majority of the field does prefer it. I think that's probably the best all-arounder that we've seen here today.
Yeah, I get the sense as well, it's maybe just what they've been most comfortable in getting up to speed with quickly. Maybe we'll see drivers finding a bit more speed in the meta from each of these cars moving forward. 4 minutes and 20 to go with James Baldwin now trying to close to the back of what could still be a top 5 finish. So behind Yardier in that Audi that we saw at the front of the shot, the white and red Audi, you've got Soldatov and Bischoff right behind, and then Carapetian and Baldwin. So as they have a little bit of a squabble into turn 1, Soldatov going very, very wide and ignoring track limits. Another Mercedes does the same as well behind.
Yeah, that was Carapetian there, and that's going to slow him down a little bit here at this point. And I think for Soldatov, he's got to be a little bit concerned about the attack that Baldwin's going to be able to have. But right now, Baldwin's main concern is Carapetian as he comes up into the corner, almost has to slam on the brakes to avoid any contact there with David. And now it looks like Baldwin's going to get a good run. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a pass here coming down to Schlossgold.
Seems like there might be a bit of damage on some of these cars. Is it going to impact their performance down the hill? No, not going to see a lunge before those Mercedes. Instead, it looked as though slightly further up, maybe with traffic playing its part, they worked their way on through. There's Karapetian, and with Baldwin now on the run in towards the double left-hander, setting up on the right-hand side of the track. Clearly not going for the move, just trying to put the pressure on and show himself in the mirrors.
Yeah, and here's another one that we've got a little bit right now. This is Naga and Schalk trying to be able to hold themselves out here. Schalk getting past Porsche out of the way. That's a slower lapped car right there as the number 70 is going to get a little bit of a better run coming off of the line, and that's going to put Naga a little bit on the back foot. But then again, here is that turbo of the Mercedes AMG coming into play. Looking to try to get it. No, good defense there from Schalk. He's going to be able to hold on.
You say good defense, I say Boris, you just ran a Mercedes out of room, and now an Audi goes deep as well. That might have been Schultz, but here we go at the line. Looked like Bischoff has run out of fuel. He's the next driver down on towards pit lane, up in towards the opening corner. That's the overtake Maserati that they're putting a lap on, so Haustein's 38 gonna potentially be a little bit of a box out here for some of the drivers in working on through. Karapetian's gonna slide up the inside. James Baldwin the next one that's gonna try and sail on through.
Oh, but Baldwin's going to get trapped a little bit behind. He's going to be able to send it down in there, but that's going to compromise his middle apex speed ever so slightly. He still gets a good run here, but Karapetian now on Solidov, and they're going to come back in. Equidistant between the three cars at the moment. I think this is going to stabilize, but with them coming down into it, I've got to imagine we're going to be close to one lap to go at the line.
That's what I was exactly trying to work out, is based on where these drivers are, the gaps to those in front. Is there one to go? Is it two to go? Lap times have been holding at around 130 in the dry, gone up to around 135, 137 in these more damp conditions. And so that's really the question with the gap up towards the front. Not sure where your race leader is as we come towards that magic number, but it may indeed be the final lap of the race.
It very well might be, and it may be the last corner here. The Karapetian's going to be able to hold on out on attack from James Baldwin as Baldwin tries to be able to make that move. Oh, Naga, we followed that battle. He is off track there at this point as there they come. Baldwin trying to look. That's the 24th place Porsche in the way, and that's going to slow things down a little bit. Could be this the opportunity that Baldwin needs.
Still not sure if they've got one lap to go or 2 laps to go here, but as Karapetian slides to the inside, he's going to be slightly pinched. Contact as well. Baldwin realizes it. Thought for a second he should tuck back into line and try and get it on apex. In the end, I don't think he really needed to. He gets the move done before they even pass out of the opening corner's power down segment. Karapetian will now have to try and get past the world's fastest gamer from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and he's going to send a look down to the inside there of Remus, but back out of it there. Smart heads-up move. Better hold on to 8th place than throw everything away. Baldwin now finds himself a full second behind Solidov. I don't know if that's going to be able to close down here, if this indeed is the last lap. Here's Jack Noller, your race leader, coming down through the infield.
And so 20 seconds to go. Whoa. You're trying to put me on the spot here to try and figure out if he's going to strike zero before he gets to the line or not. 50-50 chance of being right. I think we're going to see the checkered flag.
I think we are as well. Jack Noller with 6 seconds on the clock comes out of the final corner. 3, 2, 1. That will be checkered flag conditions as he crosses over. No, it's white flag. Checkered flag. Checkered flag is out. That is it. All right. Excuse the confusion there at that point, but that is it for Jack Noller, who wins race 2.
It would have been a little bit easier for us potentially, but winner, yes, and by 6 almost full seconds at the end. Put enough fuel in, had the right strategy, stayed out there in the rain, dared it all, and won in the 30-minute sprint. Honzik's going to grab 5th, the best of the cars that came down to the box.
Yeah, good call there for Yardier. He's got to be relatively pleased with that to be able to be the fastest of those that took the call. A nice little battle here, though, as we watch. This is Jonas Schultz closing in behind Niels Nyox. Nyox trying to hold off there in the Maserati versus the Audi as they come down through Verth.
Yeah, it's not done. Nyox, even after the pit stop and getting the damage repaired, has been trying to work his way back forward. Remember, he had gone from effectively the back towards the front and then back to the back again. 14th for him, fastest lap to his name as well. I think Niels might be wanting to do a bit more of these GT2 races. He might be around tomorrow when the pack releases, doing races on SimGrid or something.
Very well might be, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, as he's certainly got a little bit of speed there, crossing over the line. And Arjuna, that is going to wrap up 2 absolutely fantastic races here of GT2 action around the new Red Bull Ring circuit. I don't think we could have asked for more excitement than that.
No, that was great, right? Great that Kunos have been able to continue to add new content. I know plenty of people had been waiting for 2024 and the release of the Nordschleife. Of course, you mentioned the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring being part of the IGTC for this year. But I think the Red Bull Ring, a little bit of a surprise, right? Not part of the regular SRO calendar. Doesn't mean it's not a welcome addition to the party.
Yeah, we've always got to throw those little things in there to keep everybody on their toes, but we absolutely loved to be able to see it. And as you said, the DLC pack as well as the Red Bull Ring will be available tomorrow, so make sure to go check that out. And again, massive thanks to Kunos for being able to bring all of this together. Arjuna, that's about the wrap-up of our stream. Any final thoughts for you on the day?
Man, I still need to go figure out which GT2 car I'm going to try tomorrow.
I've got to do the same thing here. But for all of us here at SRO and from ACC and Kunos, thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is DJ Clark. I have been joined by Arjuna Kankapati, and massive thank you to Taylor Bedell and Mike Yao, who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes on all of this. Indeed, as well as a massive thank you to everyone who works behind the scenes at SRO, ACC, and Kunos. And folks, that available DLC pack is out tomorrow. And until you see you on the track, thanks for watching.